Anderson. I am the executive director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is the nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books, and Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. We're so excited to be here with all of you tonight, both in person and virtually, to kick off a brand new poetry series, which is going to be happening every month from here on out. It is curated by our friend Samuel Ace, and it is called Meet Me There. And for those of you who are fans of Samuel's, you will know that Meet Me There is a tribute to his work. Meet Me There is a monthly intergenerational poetry, fiction, and creative nonfiction experience curated by transgenderqueer poet and sound artist Samuel Ace. Each month, Samuel pairs an established and or mid-career artist with an up-and-coming writer for a reading by each artist and discussion of the resonances between their works. Writers exploring genre and gender boundaries will be a special focus of this series. So we are super excited to have y'all here. I'm going to introduce a little bit more about Samuel, and then Samuel will introduce our opening poet and our host poet. Samuel Ace, as I said, is a trans and genderqueer poet and sound artist. His most recent books are Our Weather, Our Sea from Black Radish, Meet Me There, Normal Sex, and Home in 3 Days, Don't Wash from Belladonna Germinal Texts, and the chapbook What Started This Mess from Above Ground Press. Ace is the recipient of the Estrella Lesbian Writer Award and the Firecracker Alternative Book Award in Poetry, as well as a repeat finalist for both the Lambda Literary Award and the National Poetry Series. Recent work can be found in Ex-Puritan Poetry, We Want It All, an anthology of radical trans poetry, PEN America, Best American Experimental Poetry, and many other journals and anthologies. A book-length poetic essay, I Want to Start by Saying, is forthcoming from the Cleveland State University Poetry Center in 2024. So please welcome Samuel Ace.
Welcome to everyone here. First, I want to have some thanks. I'm pretty new to Atlanta, and I've just been here about a year and a half, having moved here from Tucson and Western Mass. And I was intimately involved in queer, radical, trans writing communities in those places, as well as New York and elsewhere. So I know how important it is to find one's people and community. In other words, to find home. Especially post-pandemic, having moved to a new place and I happened to be caring for a very young child. Charis Books immediately came to mind as one of the long-standing gathering places for queer writers in the city. So I approached ER last spring about the possibility of starting a monthly reading series focused on queer and trans writers, mostly poets and hybrid genre-free writers. It was also my dream to pair someone from outside of Georgia or the Atlanta area with someone local to draw on the deeply queer literary talents who make this place a home. Over the next months, I hope that this evening is the beginning of a conversation about where poetry can take us in these times where queer, trans, and BIPOC folks are under constant and greater threats of violence, not only from individuals and hate groups, but from the state institutions where we and our families live. I wanted to contribute to my own desire to find home and to help provide another place in the city for us to find not only some sense of safety, but celebrate the passion and joy that were through words that are so much part of our community. So I'm grateful to ER Anderson, Dartrisha Rollins, and the entire crew at Charis for making the series possible. So tonight's writers, I am new, but very grateful to W. J. Lofton and their work. I've immersed myself in their extraordinary words over the last few weeks. And what I found there is a sacred and spiritual calling to love, specifically Black queer love, openness, and vulnerability. They are anything but shy to speak of the erotic joy of the body, and there's so much music in this work. Within that music, they also speak to the perpetual and ever-present actuality of violence to the Black body, specifically the Black queer body, What stays with me is WJ's insistence on paying attention to beauty, joy, sensuality, and the spirit without ignoring the everyday reality of living in the Black queer body. And I'm thrilled, as I hope you are, to hear these words come alive for us here tonight. I met Dior Stevens when they were one of the fellows in poetry at the Lambda Literary Retreat for Emerging Writers, where I had the privilege to work with an amazing group of poets. This was 2021, and because of COVID, the retreat was virtual. Zoom, as many of you know, can be alienating and cold, but it was not with that group. I felt a warmth and an intimacy with our far-flung fellows that stayed with me since that time. In their dolphin presence, Dior was a big part of that, and I was awestruck by their willingness to experiment, their insight, not only to their own work, but to the work of others. I recognized the voice in Cruel, their new book from that time. And here it is in its rich entirety, its music that dances across the page, its rage, its playfulness, and its love, its exploration of self. Not unlike Dior's spirit animal, the dolphin, slinging itself through the sea, communicating at times in ranges beyond grammar, but through an emotional reverberation whose ultimate meaning is found in the body rather than resting solely in words. Many of the poems in Cruel were written during the isolation of the pandemic in another year of reckoning, 2020, with the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Rashad, just so many other murders that year, before and after. The middle section of poems are dated as such. In them, I find that they call out from their isolation, asking to be heard and seen. These poems experiment with language and movement. In all of these poems, I can't help but sense the dissatisfaction with the solidity of the book, as if the poet craves to loosen their allegiance to the physical space of the page, to erupt out of the book into the space before us. In fact, that aspect is common to both of these poets. Along with a deep Black queer interiority, there exists the desire to bring language into other dimensions, performance, film, music, and beyond, a topic we can explore when we have our conversation at the end of the reading. But for now, let's listen to the poets. WJ.
Thank you. So many kind words. Thank you. First, I would like to thank Charis Books and the staff here, Samuel Ace for having this dream, my sister Dior, and just everyone who has come through the rain to see us, and those who are joining us virtually. Just know that you are loved. This is divine, and I am thankful. Tonight's reading is dedicated to this guy that we met at the gas station. And he bought us energy drinks and gum, and it's small kindness that allows for the world to keep turning. So this is for this random stranger that we ran into. How y'all feeling first? Okay, yeah. So the first poem is called Counting Kisses. My mother grips her dress. A man holds her hips. My life depends on their touching. It is 1992 on Chicago's South Side. They sit on December's edge, counting kisses. 4 on the shoulder, 3 on its blade, 2 for the body, not yet a body. She turns him inside out, plants her feet in his lap like sand pressing around a laughing child's neck. How y'all feeling? Yeah. So I like to think about options. I like to think about imagination and creativity. And I was having this conversation about what's going to separate human beings from AI, and the only thing that will separate us is improvisation, like this ability to have an organic response. And so in this poem, there's so many different options you can choose from. You can read this poem as many times and get different results. So as you're hearing certain things, just know that this is a list and you get to choose the list. You are the narrator of this poem. Fire eats. There is no quieting God's sobbing, laughter, mercy. The ache settles in us, the way mosquitoes, disappointments, pilots hover above water, in a blur bridges abandoned standing. Cheeks swell with what ifs, sunflower seeds, lies white and little, lips protrude, eyes widen at child split by adoption. The future, a new city we now call home. Our roundness pressed against glass. We were once insignificant to ourselves. Now we shake, bow, turn heads when the rain comes. Left eye lets go first. Right follows. Crying enters the room upon exiting us. Stop saying sorry. Stop hurting me. Stop and look both ways. I beg a man. Pain becomes an organ in the body. Shadow standing in your bedroom's corner. Devoted after explosions. Above, beside, in us. This world turns into a world sustained by our touching. The rich staying rich. Violence. In this version, fire eats our abusers' hands. The whole hunger leaves. Planet Earth. How y'all feeling? Okay, so I'm always thinking about how capitalism affects our life and how, you know, we're just all like trying to figure this shit out. Are we allowed to curse? I guess it's kind of too late for that. But so this poem is about love, but also about what the expectations of capitalism have on our lives. It's called Property. The gold feathers, the gold hoop earrings -1, the gold not there around the collar of the bull's bully, bought by boys bending in bed like bamboo, or less sturdy like belts smacking fresh out the shower asses, the buckle silver and Walmart bought, begs for blood in the language of bayonets, around the collar, a circle of silver, a bone hanging, a name meaning scar in Swahili, a name meaning good boy, good riddance, don't you dare leave, to the one who gives it, and to the four legs that answer. The world is a world of calls and commands. Sit, lay down, turn over, come here, stay there, good boy, darling bitch, your coat shines brighter than scars on a slave's body, on a woman's body, on a body not called to gender. Listener, which of us has seen a body freed, gold dimmed to yellow gold, gold given between gentlemen instead of flowers? So when I was in 5th grade, there was this class clown. We all have them, and you know, he just went missing one year, and there were rumors that his mother's boyfriend pushed him in the lake, but no one ever did anything. And I was always interested in how Black boys go missing and how Black girls go missing, and sometimes like they go missing and no one goes to look for them outside of their families. And so this is just my reckoning. I was at this writer's retreat last year, and I had a dream about Antavius. And it was such a random dream, and I was like, oh, that affected me. This Black boy went missing, and I still remember him. So this is called Forte. Jesus is break, eat, pour, drink. More than a kind suggestion, aproned, he strolls through the kitchen, stirring soup softer than bird bones. Domestic savior, Stigmata can't grip steam but held death tight, close, as new lovers dancing. He whispers, I love you. Every childhood shank turns over like an engine. I want to be responsible. I want to rescue the boy in the lake swallowing mouthfuls of Alabama catfish. His mother's boyfriend pushed him in, rumors repeated. He was plump, full of water, graying without age. Jesus, 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 his grandmother moaned. Where'd the time go? Why her boy touched wet by some man. How y'all feeling? It's so good to see y'all. I know that was kind of heavy. In this poem, I wrote this poem a few years ago, and I was thinking about this. Okay, this may be a little explicit, but we have to tell the truth. So this idea that we have to rely on other people for our pleasure, and I just denied that I was in a relationship, and I just remember my former partner being shocked that I masturbated, and I was like, "Are we five?" I was like, "Are we five?" But this is what this poem is about. The title is also the first line of the poem. When your touch went missing, I remembered holding myself for an eternity. Prior to flesh crawling over bone, spilled galaxies, cried out my own name and called it with what was not yet a hand. Sweet mercy, how'd we forget the questions we answered with our own touch? Y'all can say amen on that. Petting the dog. Abandonment is a practice. He pets the dog, but not you. Go practice. Across town, a man pleases himself. Small possibilities cover his chest, makes his hair sticky as licorice. Your face is not in his fantasy, but unknowingly he has passed your scent, sitting on various department store counters. At this hour, where do you imagine love to be? Under the shower's head bathing, perhaps near one of death's beds holding a hand curved with cancer. Would you consider wilding yourself with wonder or unbraiding fear's rope to reach out and find the center inside of you? How y'all feeling? How are we looking on time? Because, yeah? Okay. Okay. Two more after this. Okay, we're good. All right, language. This is one of my favorite poems that I've written. We language, we sex numb, bodies shimmer wet prayers. We unwrap legs and the sky shares its face with the corner of the ceiling. Fan spins in the same direction after you leave, after everyone leaves, clockwise and lonely. Our mouths wander rows upward wet, tongues knife blades of spit, a moist scar. Dry riots are forbidden, deemed not a language. We break bruises into white noise. Take, eat. This is my body which is broken for you. It becomes too much not to touch a boy that leaks. We leak a storm alive. We touch and wake up in the mouth of a dream. We dream inside the other's mouth and slip into a song. You're gorgeous, but you can't fly. We dance, a fire races us home. Bodies shimmer after silence replaces everything. Our legs unwrap and the sky becomes a lid across the eye. Stars float above our vision. Before we took teeth from the mouth of our zippers and inserted inches of language, we are a language that dances when everyone is asleep. But God always sees us falling in love over and over again. Thank you. So this is the last poem. It's, not heavy. It's called Right Hooks. Um, I just wanted to write something very imaginative, something provocative and sexy. I'm thinking as I'm getting older, I was taught to like suppress so much growing up, and I know for a fact that Black boys aren't allowed to express themselves, and particularly Black queer boys aren't allowed to express themselves. So I was like, I might as well put everything on the page, because who gonna check me? Right hooks. Dare we discover everything while slow dancing? Hips keep us from falling in halves, but not apart. Two angels can wrestle and God would turn it into dancing. Two shadows stand feet apart. One whispers, baby, we gonna be all right. Puts a hook in jaw. Shadow on wall begins slow dancing. Shadow on floor has no gag reflex. Only nectar is left. Over the fence bees sip honeysuckle. In an abandoned parking lot, men sit 3 words apart. The car's speakers, in a falsetto, Frank Ocean. I could hate you now. It's all right. On the hood of the car, Maul stands. Nothing within reach has stopped breathing.
All right. Another round of applause for W.J. Lofton, please. I like to associate only with people with talent, and so I am blessed to see not only the people behind me, but everyone in front of me as well, some new and familiar faces alike. So thank y'all all for being here. Thank you to Sam for leading me and some other incredible poets through a really interesting time of poetry on Zoom. Thank you so much for caring for us in that truly magnificent way. I will never forget that. And WJ, thank you for making what was already one of the most life-changing experiences of my life, which was Cave Canem, so much more phenomenal. I am so in awe of you all the time and grateful that we have this life together now. So you stuck now, bitch. Okay. All right. So yeah, I guess we're gonna read from this thing that I published this year. It's called Cruel Cruel. Thank you. This is my debut full-length collection out with Nightboat Books. And I'm honored to be here at this store reading this. There's a lot of legacy here that I'm just grateful to be in company of. So thank you to this incredible bookstore and to Atlanta for showing up. It's ugly outside. I really appreciate y'all and everyone online, including my family. Hi, I see you. I love you so much. All right, let's get into it. This first one is a long form poem. Make sure I'm good on time, y'all. This first one is a long form poem. It's called Once Again. And as Sam mentioned, most of this book was written in the Bay in the beloved early COVID years. So I'll let that be enough of a foregrounding for now. This is Once Again. Once again, reminded I am not enough, rough snout stuffed full of pretty wisdoms, no outside luster be. Once again, reminded how a smooth 7 ain't never gonna be no tantalizing 10. Once again, inferior to Greek statuesque bodies captured in grams untethered, sickle cellular devices. Once again, flying over occupied lands on a white man's snowy dime. Once again, flashes of tens of putty bodies. Once again, self-destruct, self-sabotage, self-low deeper than rivers of flyover envy. Once again, reminded I nothing, reminded I ching, reminded I worth the worth of half a feeble man or a quarter of one sparkling black boy. Once again, I expose you, exposed, we all exposed, just below the borderline. Once again, shit goes left, 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 plight, left, left. Once again, feminine nails, masculine chin strap, feminine digits, masculine eyes, masculine maudlin, feminine chainsaw, masculine born again, feminine. Once again, holding breath like it owes me something. Once again, wings flap restless dust up in our house of smoke and ain't shit on fire. Once again, anticipating chemtrails of yesteryear to sprinkle over me, warm like I've forgotten. Once again, mama. Once again, unnamed, or I refuse to give you name. Feign Alzheimer's early onset. I know the Mary ain't helping. You hush now. Ooh, once again, I'm clutching diamond ancestry. Yes, I speak of ancestry lined with diamonds and ivory blood. Leon, you captive, captive. If I go home, when I go home, will I go home? Do you have a home for my baggage? Once again, blink fast. Big girls don't cry. Big boys pay bills, fuck bitches, get money. Once again, mind endless. Once again, scroll infinities laced in front lines. Good times, mostly lapsed. Once again, a language given unto, reworked new, or perhaps refurbished, direct. Once again, just saying some shit. Once again, passing my red rock. Once again, simplicity reigns. Once again, once, again, once, again. Once, since dunce, truce flux, carry home. Once wailed truest symphonies and lowest hell bottoms, and yet that nigga still ain't call me flat back. Do you see me? Bare now? Once again reminded I am not more than I am. Once again. Once. Again. Once. Again. Once. Again. 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 Once. All right, y'all. How y'all feeling? You good? Thank you. So as I was living in the Bay and trying to figure out how the hell we operate in the most incredibly inoperable times, I was writing this book and grateful to live in a part of West Oakland. Shout out to the Bay and anybody online from the Bay. I love you forever. Grateful to at least be in shelter where I could be outside. I had this glorious, huge backyard, which was unheard of in the Bay. And so I was outside a lot. And so I just want to thank the Bay and the land of the Bay for being such a good home for me and a good heart to rest and recover and heal in. I'm going to read a few poems called the Interlude series, which are in the middle section of the book. Shout out to my Toni Morrison bookmark. Just in the middle section of the book, I call the Black Vortex section, but very belovedly. Just thinking about the ways in which we have come to anticipate certain arenas in literature and art, and the Black pages are really just an intentional move to invert that expectation of expecting whiteness when we engage with the page or engage in art spaces. What happens when we implicate and foreground Blackness as the center, as the focus, and everything else has to reverberate from that. So this is one of a suite of 4 poems. This is Interlude Alpha. Light reflecting by the orange moon of my last heart. Tell me how the wind chimes from 6 miles down the pass. Feeling the same song sung overtime, 6 years running, 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 Apollo landing in this Saturn return. A sweet picking of scabs, a bright towel brushed over 9-inch knife wounds, reflecting strands of feminine joy passed down the 3-line. Tell me how nectarful the forward 6s march. Tell me the prize has upped its elemental till the marble tumbles and the moon sinks, till the past passes, till then, till God, till Willie, till Murray, till all the cups have been spilled. The next one I'll read is Interlude Beta. If my phone would stop trying to lock on me, great. Interlude Beta. And I want to say shout out to a beloved dear friend, Kimberly Michelle Vaughn, in another dear city of mine, Ohio, who challenged me to learn this one by heart. Shout out to my old theater days. So I'm going to try to give y'all most of this off the top. All right, we're going to see how it goes. I'm going to have a little cheat sheet here. If you look down, just like snap at me. Okay. All right, this is Interlude Beta. I spill my body languages out willingly onto your concrete walls, an 8-count of rapture, a falsetto for 90-degree bends and tongues spoken into themselves. Here, in the palace of ancestral irony, we knock borders until the courtyard slips on her nightdress. You close the shutters 'cause this ain't a ritual for listening. It's a lambasting of every smashed piano that made you a man, and don't I croon for you like so? Like a caretaker of a half-widened well. Trusting rim spokes, 'cause the syncope ain't synced in since the Sunday of half memory. Looky here at the pot calling the kettle a salt fiend. When you leave, don't forget to leave trinkets of your treasures with those who trifled them. Graywash mornings planning permanent residency, residing on lines anxious to be redrawn, cackling fire pit forests, anticipating another hot, hot, hot summer. The streets cutting up and the lines getting long again. Frail fraughts brought back to the shores they exiled, a coconut with becoming hairs, oasis of the kingdom. 11:15 a.m., now listening to warm tones. Sun baby sent a honeybee to watch me from the window, but I smashed it with my sting. Fear has become the primary motive of the categorically denominated. I did that, you know. Okay. Thanks to Kim. If you're watching, thanks for making me remember that. Okay. I'm thinking a lot about church lately. I'm thinking a lot about Barbara Ann Tier in the National Black Theater in Harlem in the 70s and 80s, and a lot of the beautiful, incredible work they did. If you're not familiar, I would check them out. But a huge part of what they did was go into the community, into the Black community of Harlem, and go specifically to bars, churches, and there was some other like communal space, because they felt it important to be where Black people were not only together, but in relative comfort and ease. You know, what spaces are we afforded in that way? And the church being one of them, the Baptist and Pentecostal churches specifically. And I wrote this poem very much with that in mind back on 4/13/2020. So I'm gonna need some audience participation, which I know is wild in a poetry reading, but just rock with me. Whenever I give you a little this, if you can all just say, believe in me. Okay, let's try it out. Okay, now say it like you've been in church for like 3.2 hours and you're kind of tired, but you're still rocking with the spirit. I know that's right. Okay, let's do it. All right, this is 4/13/2020, Walk the Plank. Femboy nails clawing up rafters of hypercriticality thrice removed. Hop in shower, grab rave blue squeegee. Try your damnedest to scrub dirt ancestry off of neck, arrow arms, maleficent bird chest. Believe in me. Believe in me. Hear thy rumble spit. It'll taste only of mountains and mantras. Believe in me. Bellowing untethered in this, our unceasing. Thanks, y'all. That was good. That was good. Y'all are good. This next one is 4/12/2020, wet spring, howling sour eucalyptus. We keep telling ourselves, hopefully, in what's beyond the ever gray, excavating capitalism out of lungs like slices of peach cobbler. And I have to believe there's many someones for everyone's. Saw the end of the arroyo and metastasized hydrangea delirium, shanking capitalism out of spleens like baby black radicals. Thank you, thank you. All right, I'm gonna read the second to last interlude, and then we're gonna jump into another section of the book. This is interlude Gamma. It's 3:35 p.m. It's 3:45 p.m. And if I drop this craft sickle, I might just admit this lock and key, obtusify the eye until seeds open their diaphragms. Time is no longer of the essence. A sweetness lost at midday sun, a knot of affections. 3 whispers and a bell in the background, always something there, always something peeking above the bridge. Thank you, thanks. Thank y'all. We're moving now into the last section before we jump. We'll end with the middle section again, but we're briefly touching on the last section of the book, Untitled Yellow Pages, 1 through 12, shortened UIP in the book. And this book is about a lot of things. And unfortunately, I think if you place any of a subject or an experience of living in 2020, you have to reckon with the racial violence that we all were living through at that time and live through continuously in this country and in this state. And it was particularly frustrating, difficult, enraging to be dealing with all these things so far removed from my family. I was in California. My family's all from Ohio and South Carolina. And just to be sort of isolated beyond anything I could have imagined was its own sort of learning journey. And so I took a lot of refuge in nature. And even in nature, still can't escape the shit. And that's what this one's about. This is UIP 1. Style quick checks over clip staple coal, over chopperless blue skies, over a summer of endless inferno, rockets, and artillery. Aghast with sycophantic notions, black Iliads pour from activized, catalyzed sensation. And the ghost rivers of Harlem play light patches in your good ear. Sitting sideways in Gold Rush, downloading mental schematics for what once was natural. Didn't get to see Blue Jezebel as she flew by again. Raven, call him Sunset, cacaws 5 times in solidarity for the homies. Call it Eco-Negro. Still, no blacks in the Yuba. Only nude lily whites and 8-ball peacocks. Still, there's a hope in the wind that slants pessimism. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Checking out my time. Sweet. It's nice when you like rehearse things and it works out in real life. Like I did that. This is the second one. This is UIP 2. And I haven't never told this story actually, what this poem's actually about. I usually don't even talk my poetry readings. I just like y'all, I guess. But this one is in that time period in 2020, I was going to some protests, and there was one that was a very beautiful intentional space with a Korean activist group and a sort of BLM associated group, and we were going to a local councilman of Oakland's house just to protest outside of their house. Like the organization gave him notice, we're just gonna like roll up on him and his family of kids. But like we kind of wanted that to be more of a dialogue than this sort of like rah rah, we pulling up on your doorstep, like come outside. It was meant to be a sort of be in dialogue with us. And so we showed up on that Sunday, beautiful day, a lot of people. I mean, that street is very nice. Oakland Hills area was not ready for all that. And they were gone. Like they had literally fled the premises, like locked down, closed all the blinds. Everything was like, it was a ghost house, which in some ways, of course, I understand, but it was disheartening, right? So we just made a lot of noise and we stayed there for a while and shook up the neighborhood in different ways. But it was frustrating to just not be heard. That's all we were looking for, right? This is UIP2. A candle holding revolutionary hands. 6 clown cars with hornets' nests up top. Beating Kwengari, Jangu. The might of 2 swells smashing chalk on 82K a year. Open your windows, Lauren. Why aren't you home, Lauren? What hillside view blasts decency out of frame? Dreaming of being heard, dreaming of being bit down on by loose ties. We never dreamt this summer, and yet Lady June blows prideful as the people beat the street. Horns honk from dusk till dawn. Firecracker encores every night. A summer of old Jack and Jasmine in the backyard. Undreamt, unheard of. So Lauren, if you're watching, what was up, homie? Where are you at? Like, we just wanted to talk. We just had a couple of questions. I got 2 more poems for y'all. Lauren's a punk. I got 2 more poems for y'all. This is UIP 9, and then we'll swing back into the last interlude. UIP 9. Flyby brandy. Mixed calluses, asking for a highball. Just chatting politics. Just listening to white cries on black parades. Just lifting lug legs dumbbells round my Jim Crow ankles. Just sliding, just assembling roses for the next funeral I won't be able to attend. Just when you feel the need for heart palpitations, just step outside. Just enhancing my melanin, just wondering where God drinks, just having another and other off day. Just breathing in dragon, steaming out snow, just slow breaths. Poet of the current, how do you swim? We don't. Just brothers I'll never meet, just brothers trying to see sunrise, just clouds, just rampage, just liberation looting, just fucking turn off the TV, just silence, respite for us, just silence. You, where is your just voice? Told myself I'd sit outside today as long as necessary, but the whole block is hot with grieving. Shovels scooped up full of dog shit, peach trees pitying their blisters. Can only depend on the sun as much as I depend on Black Death, which is to say, with utmost certainty, just a small chance, small, of absolute obliteration. Thank y'all. Thank you. Thank y'all for rocking through with this. And we're going to have a quick little dialogue, and then we'll like sign some books and hang out and stuff. This is the last of the interludes, and I want to shout out to Trisha Lowe, my editor, one of my editors, along with Tanya M. Foster, who reminded me that I had these poems, and they honestly wouldn't have made it into the book if not for a good editor. So shout out to good editors, because they're a blessing. This is Interlude Delta. All that just to start a poem for the new moon of my orange moon, I offer a puzzle that will madden you, but your ego feeds differently. Repulsive namesake for bloodlust, lovelust, the ratcheting of the innards. The death horn blows again, swerving in and out of intersectionality, giddy as a glumful of glee, feasting on drop-down rainbows. A poet is a poem, is a keeper. Thinking Fox had the right idea, thinking Fox is North Star, 'cause liberation never came before a few. Never came before a few fireworks, but I've sicked dogs on men in white. A wave swirling mind membranes just to turn my head toward the flame for a bell longer. Just to turn my flame for a bell longer, like revolution's last chance. Thank y'all so much. Hey y'all.
Yay. Yeah. He's on. No, we're on. Yeah,
I think so now.
Is it on? Yeah, we're on. Okay. Wow. I'm kind of speechless. I don't know about you all, but I feel that way. Just very moved by hearing both of you in person, and seeing the work on the page is nothing like hearing what you all sound like in person. So thank you. And thanks everyone for coming. So I want this to be a discussion. So, the audience, if you have questions in the middle, I have some questions that just to start us talking. And please feel free to raise your hand, and we'll have a microphone to come ask a question or just talk or a comment. So, but I first wanted to, and thinking about both of your work, to start with thinking about home. I mean, obviously, I talked about that as a theme for me, finding home in a new place, in this place, Atlanta. And I just found out that Dior and I grew up in Cleveland, so hi Cleveland, and that's a connection. But maybe both of you could talk a little bit about what home means and how it is fertile ground for. I'm not only talking about geography, but fertile ground for poetry, for your life. Yeah. And all of you, certainly, please join in too.
I think yours works too. Yours works too. I can start.
Selfish.
I can start. We were just talking about this at a little dinner beforehand, about the power of literal placement, where you are, where your spirit and body and mind are in the process of drafting, writing, brainstorming, all of that. And if it affects you or not, and we both were saying absolutely yes. There are cities I know that I've been so just charged electrically and creatively, and others where maybe I don't feel that as much. And I'm sure there's all different, myriads of criteria that change that. But I think it is a powerful thing to consider of what is home to me, because I've changed a lot of environments growing up. I changed schools a lot. I moved a little bit, quite a bit in my younger 20s, and always kind of searching for this idea of home. Mm-hmm. Searching for this space for finally all of your manifestations and dreams of feeling safe, feeling loved, feeling secure, feeling stable, all these things that you would want, you would associate with home. And maybe I think a part of that journey, for me at least, was realizing that was a superstructure of a dream that I had in my mind that wasn't completely really obtainable. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that was something to mourn in and of itself. But then what was kind of immediately after that was the rejoicing of how many other ways in which I can create home, in which, or also home was already created for me. We were joking earlier about just the possibility of me moving to Atlanta and me saying that I've really grown to believe that home is the people who I love and who love me. And wherever they are, if I'm there with them, that's home. So it opens my mind to the idea of where home can be now. And it was difficult for me in writing this book because I did feel very unhomed in a way. But I think that led to something. So there's that.
So I'm thinking about home as a location that it's an obligation. I think I'm thinking of home as in what am I obligated to in my body, like what is pushing me to make this vessel feel more in tune with the vessel spiritually that I have. And so approaching that and feeling like a oneness, right? That type of home inside the body first and inside the spirit. And then I'm thinking about the home, and it automatically comes to being the South, right? Home for me means being the South around Black people, around queer people, being around poor people, working people, right? That resonates with me. I want to be around a place where I feel safe, but also in places of unsafety and uncertainty, I need to know that it is worth it. And sometimes home is difficult to exist in. This body sometimes is difficult to exist in, but I know it's worth doing the work.
I hear all of that. I just also, related to what you said, Dior, about that being unhomed can create its own, obviously, its own book, and its own poetry. But but in a way too, is it that the act of writing is a way to connect? If connection is about home, which I feel very much, that it's a way of reaching out and finding those connections, whether it's in the physical place that we are or somewhere out there in the people we know.
I really enjoy your note about sort of queer, Black, and queer interiority, which is something I think I wasn't even fully aware of doing or writing towards in this book, that I feel like people like you and other friends and beloveds have made me aware of, that in a time of such isolation, the best place for me to go was inward and kind of deconstruct that idea of home that I had in myself, which was rotten, and rebuild it from the foundation up, right, with a certain amount of intentionality that I hadn't experienced the need for before. So in a way, that sort of 2020 reckoning again led to several things.
So you both work in other media. You made these gorgeous films, WJ, that just visually, the interplay between visual and language is just really exceptional. And I love them, looking at them. And you, Dior, you're a performer. You've worked in theater. Your performances are amazing. And I think I read somewhere you wanted to be a painter at some point. But both of you, the visual in your work for both of you is really extraordinary. So just love to hear what you have to say about what other mediums do, or the other mediums in combination with language. What do they do for you? What do you feel that work attains, or can it attain an emotional presence that the page cannot? And then as an extension of that, how do you deal with the residue, like the residue of words on the page, where someone may hold a book and not hear you and not hear your amazing performance of that work? Is the printed page ever enough?
No. It's like almost trying to witness a miracle on the paper solely. Right? Like people went to go see Jesus, right? So they can actually see the miracle. Like you have to live a life to actually participate in the miracle. Like the miracle can happen here, but you actually want to be a recipient of the miracle in a different type of way. And I'm thinking about language, right? Not just written language, but orating, right? Like spoken word, right? How like it also makes you participate in a different way with language or body language and all these different like methods and modes.
Mhm.
And I also believe as creatives, we have an obligation to think about how many ways can we take up space and share healing work. And I'm interested in being creative. So that also means that I'm interested in not being a singular thing or a singular person, right? It means that I have to be interested in where the work takes me.
Yeah.
And Dior, I want to comment on also like the imagination that you put into the hieroglyphs in the book, right? Of like this inventiveness of seeing that something that did not exist and saying that, oh, I want to create a language for myself, and then also allow people to have access to that type of generosity. I think you have to be generous in your giving.
Thank you for bringing the hieroglyphs up. He's mentioning that each chapter, each section kind of starts with the hieroglyph that I made myself during 2020 in an effort to sort of create a new language. And for me, at least for this project in particular, and they are my largest other influences, are theater, performance, and movement and dance. And I think they have just instructed as art forms my relationship to language so intensely, where I think I've mentioned in a previous conversation that language is very, in my mind, it's very rarely a static thing. It's always in movement. It's always in flux. It's always capable of some sort of cataclysmic change or eruption, right? So it's so critically important to me when I'm thinking about composing language in the page, which is right. You're trying to like witness this miracle, which is like, you kind of like, I think as a poet who works in other, especially more visual mediums, accept that you're not going to get everything you want out of this. And so it's actually becomes kind of fun once you let that go, because you think, well, then what kind of carving or sculpture or entity or phenomena can I make this then? I think that's kind of maybe why we keep coming back to it, because it is kind of a fascinating, like amorphous, continually changing thing. But on this project, I knew I had to honor how much movement was happening in my spirit on the page, especially with this language, and thinking about, again, being outside a lot, writing this book and seeing all the movement of the world, of the earth, even when we as people were forced to be so still, really reminded me that stillness is real, a very real concept and very necessary, but maybe not as ever present as we think it is at times.
And also I'm thinking about, the page as our attempt. It's the first attempt to communicate something fully. And then when we see these absences or these small failures, which I don't call failures, we are allowed to revise. And then if it does not fit on the page, we get to think about it differently. We get to like develop a different approach.
I love that. I also, and it may be related to this, both of you have the, feel like the resonance of the spiritual, like there's a calling to something higher, even in the midst of, what 2020 and beyond and before. I'm just really struck by that sense. WJ, you're always calling out, and I feel that in you too, Dior. I'm not sure where that's going, but I just feel it. Do you want to talk about that?
This is funny. A lot of this we were
Let's
talking
talk
about earlier.
God, or talk about...
Let's talk about God. Where's the wine? I think we can both relate to this. I think it's hard to escape that if it is an integral part of like your childhood, your identity. That is maybe really my first relationship to language, is the Bible, is the church, is going to Catholic school, but then occasionally going to Baptist services with my father's side of the family, and having this sort of like split idea of what this one text, or how it's interpreted and how it's performed and how it's received in an audience. I mentioned the National Black Theater earlier, and they spent so much time in churches because there's so much movement that occurs in a Black church. There's so much voice and voices being lifted and raised up high, right? And it looks maybe frantic or out of control to maybe outside eyes, but it's such a spiritual movement that I think speaks to the deeply spiritual existence of Blackness that I'm questioning still for myself and many others. It's a long legacy of people who are questioning this and interrogating it. And I think it's wonderful to be able to do the same thing in a contemporary queer lens, queer Black lens that I think both of us and a lot of other people, some in this room, are also doing.
I'm very interested in God because I have this poem called Dominium, and all these things happen under God's watch. And I'm very interested in thinking of, I love God for one. I'm still figuring out what that means for me. But as a Black queer person, I'm having to investigate what God's love and God's appearance in my life looks like. And it goes back to home. I first have to believe that I am divine and a part of something divine, and that this divine entity, being, does not hate me for being queer, for one, because there are conversations, right, that center around damnation for queer people based off of certain beliefs. And I reject that. I have to say that out loud. I reject that notion because I have come here to be an expression of God that has never existed before. And so for me to believe that, I have to show up as that. And so my life informed my interactions with God. I expect to experience a miracle every day, daily. I expect it. And I'm also not afraid to interrogate God. I know there's like, oh, you shouldn't question God. I think that's crazy. How do you get to know something? How do you get to love something if you don't ask questions?
Yes. I love that. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Any thoughts, questions from
We want to
out
talk
there?
to y'all.
Yeah, y'all. Yeah, I'm so glad to talk about that.
Talk about God.
Yeah, just, I mean, we don't usually talk about that in poetry readings or any of it, and I love, thank you for talking about that, which leads me a little bit into the next, oh, is there a question? Oh, thanks.
You better watch out.
Thank y'all for being here and for reading your marvelous work. I really appreciate it. I'm curious about your approaches to compilation. Just like on a form level, you have poems that maybe you're writing for, like intentionally writing for inclusion in this thing. And you have others that maybe you didn't plan to include that will make it in. You have aesthetic things that you end up doing, like with the actual appearance of the pages. It feels like there's so many layers of how you create this unified experience. And I'm curious about, like, you know, I guess the steps of your process and how that all comes together.
Thank you. That's a really great question. I think the first thing that was abundantly clear to me was that I, coming from theater, really wanted to lean into a sort of 3-act structure. That felt familiar enough for me to be able to take all of these sort of massive considerations that I was moving through at the time and place them in that. I knew what that looked like. I knew how it moved. And I knew I could maybe break those rules because I was so familiar with it. And that was honestly the only thing that was super solid to me at first. I just kind of was writing up a storm. I'm usually writing up a storm, but I was extra writing up a storm at this time, just burning through journals. And I was actually losing a lot of stuff, like literally, metaphorically, all sorts of things. And I mentioned even the interlude sections, literally she was at the time or previously a professor of mine. And she was like, I feel like you were sending some poems in for class that like you just forgot about. I was like, you're right. What poems? And so we did some work to find them. And I really do think I made a little comment about it earlier, but a good editor, I love being in dialogue with other artists because I can pump out the work. That's not a problem for me. But to think about the threads, the connective tissue, to have someone and someones who are able to not only encourage and, hype you up, but challenge you, to interrogate you, to get to know you, right, on a way that pushes you both out of your comfort, but into your sort of glory and shine. And that just really, I'm always celebratory of collaborative efforts in that way. So once I kind of had all these poems, and I just felt like a big, massive cloud. Like to me, I feel like maybe this is the worst. Yeah, I know I should like avoid that, but it felt like it kind of came together into a sort of nice storm in a way, thanks to the sort of molding hands of some really beautiful, incredibly intelligent people, Tanya M. Foster and Trisha Lowe. I really appreciate them for helping me guide the boat into that direction. Because I can have it all sort of, we were talking about this earlier. This is so funny. In a very Piscean way, I can dream 1,000 dreams and I can maybe write about those, but then you want me to start putting things together and I'm like, hold up. Like, what do you mean? But for some other folks, more earthy folks, that is a more natural inclination. And I'm so in awe of that all the time. But those people then talk to me and we can somehow make some things shake. But for me, the first thing is just kind of generation.
Yeah.
I kind of overdo it because then I have no problem with cutting back. There's a lot. Like there is honestly a whole other book of this that will never see the light of day. I should burn it. But it's there because I need that excess to then trim the fat. I have to work with excess in a way. Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you.
Really good question. Yeah. I think I want to respect the bookstore here. So I think in our audience outside of here, so I'm going to bring this to a close. I hate to, but we're here and feel free to stick around and talk and continue this conversation. But thank you all for coming and thanks everyone out there and the internet. This has been great. Thank you both.
Thank you.
I do want to let y'all know that we have some lovely comments in the chat. So just people giving lots of love from all over the country. So I see Eric Deal, Veronica Henry, Kim, a bunch of folks just giving lots of love throughout the reading. So I wanted to acknowledge them. And they were offering up their favorite lines. And oh, I think Kim is actually your mom. Yes. So very special person in the house. So some real friends in the chat. So thank you for being with us. And if folks don't have a copy of Cruel, you can click this teal button at the bottom center of the screen to buy your copy. We will have signed copies while supplies last. So go ahead and hit that button. And we are going to say thank you and good night to all of y'all watching from afar.